Hey everyone, welcome to week 4 of our DIY rolling kitchen island. Here it is, just a quick review of where we're at. We have the basic cabinet put together. Last week we got the bottom slats cut out. I just took them off because I just put them on loosely and got them sanded up. I just wanted to show you the way that I'm going to fasten on those slats. I didn't want to put screws through from the top. So I'm actually, if you flip this over, you can see I've put pocket screw there, there, and there. Again, I love pocket screws. They're very easy to use, very handy, multi-purpose. And the nice thing about this is I can pocket screw these runners on underneath, and then I can lay my slats on top of there and screw them on from the bottom, and no one will ever see anything. I often get questions about using plans or not using plans. As you can see on this project, I'm not using a plan. I just have a picture. Personally, I prefer that because it gives me the flexibility to change things up a little bit. I also just enjoy the challenge of making something from a picture. Just the mental challenge of figuring out how to dimension it and what kind of wood to use, and to me that's kind of half the fun. But having said that, I'm certainly not opposed to using plans, and there's a lot of great plans, free ones also online. I used to have access to AutoCAD program, and I would draw plans myself for some of the projects that I've built, and then students could use those plans to build their own. In fact, I still see them being used here and there by different students. So I'm not opposed to using plans, but as you can see on this project, it just kind of adds to the challenge and the technique to kind of design as you go, keeping in mind the basic principles of design and dimensions and wood use. And also I find the other advantage of not using a plan is it allows you to use the tools that you have. A lot of plans that you'll find in woodworking magazines involve complicated joints like mortise and tenons and things like that maybe you don't have the equipment to use. I like to use a lot of pocket screws because that's what I have. And so not using a plan gives you the flexibility to switch things up a little bit using the tools that you have. And I think that's really what I want to encourage people to do, is that when you're learning how to do woodworking, and that's always been sort of the intent in my shop programs, is I'm going to give you some basic skills, and you can take those skills home, and with a few simple tools you can start building things. You don't need $3,000 table saws, you don't need very expensive equipment, you need a few simple things, and off you go. So I decided I'm going to put a shelf across here. I'm going to keep it about 14 inches up from the bottom. That'll leave about 8 inches there. And I'm going to do a solid shelf just because we have slats here. We already have slats on the side. I think a solid shelf will, I don't know, just you can get too much of the slat look, so I just want to avoid that. So I'm going to show you how to do a glue up to create a slab. Here's the 4 pieces that I'm going to use to make that shelf. Now they're a little wider than what I need right now, which works out well because generally speaking we don't want to use pieces that are more than 4 inches wide for gluing the slab together, just because every piece will cup a little bit, and we want to make sure that everything stays straight today and next year and 20 years from now, so that everything is still straight. First thing we do when we want to glue a slab together is we want to make these edges nice and smooth. You can see that both edges are still rough, and if we try to put 2 rough edges together, for example like this, you try to glue that together, you can see there's already a big gap in there. No glue is going to hold. That's not going to work. So we need to make them nice and smooth, and the way I always do it is I'll do one side on the jointer and then I'll do the other side on the table saw, so that we have a nice even width all the way along. When you're using the jointer, you want to make sure that you put the concave side down. Now this one, I would say this is concave like this. So I'm going to put that side down on the jointer table, If you do the other side, if it's like concave like this, what you end up having is kind of this rocking effect, and you're never going to get it straight. So concave side down. Alright, there we have it. Nice smooth edge. That'll make a good glue joint. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side on the table saw. Just going to give a little table saw tutorial while we're at it here. I just jointed this side. Now I want to cut them at 5 inches to get my proper width. Now, like I said, general rule of thumb is 4 inches for maximum width, but 5 will be fine. These are going to be fastened all the way along, so this should be okay. So there's a couple things about using the table saw that I want to point out. Number one is your blade width, blade height right here should be about 1/4 inch above the surface of the piece that you're cutting. Anything more than that, I guess the question is, if you turn your blade up too high, how much of your finger do you want to cut off, right? It's just dangerous to have that blade sticking up that high. And besides, if you want to get really technical, the lower your blade, the more surface you have cutting. The more tooth contact, I guess, you have on your wood, nicer cut you're going to get. So I'm going to run this through here, and I like to stand on this side, and I'm going to stand behind here, because if a table saw kicks back, you don't want to be standing behind it, you want to be standing off to the side. I like standing on this side because then I can keep the workpiece tight against the fence with this hand as I'm feeding it through. Sometimes I see people standing on this side, and that's fine, as long as you realize that you're going to have to pull it in with this hand to keep it tight here. What I sometimes see happening is people are feeding it through, and they end up kind of pushing it away from the fence. You're not going to have a nice parallel piece. So I stand on this side, I feed it through. One of the most important rules of using a table saw is when you've come through on the other end, make sure that you push it all the way through. What I see sometimes students doing is they push it through to like here, and they say, okay, my cut's done, I let go and I turn my saw off. That's very dangerous, because now you have a piece of wood stuck between the blade and the fence. That could grab and shoot back at you. So always make sure you push it all the way through. The other thing to be aware of is always have a push stick handy. I make my own. This table saw actually has one mounted on it. That works as well. I like to use wood ones. I like this shape, it's just what I'm familiar with. The other nice thing about using these ones is you can see it's been kind of cut a little bit. If you're using a wood push stick and you're doing a very narrow piece and you have to kind of run it over the blade to push your piece through, no big deal. It's wood, it cuts nice. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to run this through. I'll use the push stick, even though general rule of thumb again is a workpiece narrower than 4 inches. You don't really need a push stick, but again, you want to just play it safe. Make sure you keep your hands clear of the blade. Regardless of whether you're using a push stick or not, I've learned from an old guy I used to work for, is when you're running a piece through, I'll keep my pinky on this side of the fence. And just, again, it just seems like a simple little thing. Maybe it's silly, but I'm used to it. And I know if my pinky's over here, my hand can't go towards that blade. I just want to avoid that. Because I already am missing a piece of a thumb from a table saw incident when I was 16. I don't really want that to happen again. So again, safety is very important when using a table saw. So normally I'd have my dust collector on, but it's kind of noisy, so just for the sake of the video, I'm not going to run it. So I'm going to start up my saw, and I'm going to run this through, just to show you I am going to use a push stick. Maybe I'll do one with a push stick and one without, just for sake of demonstration. So again, you can see when I was feeding it through, I ran my pinky on this side and I pushed it all the way through. Right? Push it all the way through. There's no contact with the saw blade anymore. Then I'll step back and turn it off. When I'm gluing a panel together like this, I want to look at the end grain. First of all, I'm going to look at the face grains, I guess. I got a pretty big hole there, so I'm going to keep that down. This looks pretty good. This one looks okay. This got a bit of a knot there. I'll probably keep that down. And then the next thing I want to look for is the end grain. Now, if I can get this up close enough, you can see that this grain goes this way. So that's the tree rings actually. They run in an arc like this. Now this board is going to cup the opposite way of the way the rings go because of the shrinkage, the way the shrinkage works in relation to the rings of the tree. It's going to cup the opposite of the rings. So if I have all these boards together and they're all cupped the same way, like these two here. So I have all the rings the same way and they're all going to cup a little bit. It's just a little fraction of an inch actually. But over a time of many years, and they keep cupping, you could get this panel, the whole panel has a bit of a cup to it. So what I'll do is I'll always make sure that those rings are opposite each other. So if this one runs this way, this one runs this way. Okay, so I'm going to lay them in place. I'm going to look at all the rings. This one's down, this one's up, this one is down, and this one is up. So that worked out well. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just put an X on there with my pencil. Now I know how they have to be glued together. When you're gluing a panel like this, you will flip them up like this, and these ones like this. So there's going to be glue on one side of these outside ones and both sides of the inside ones. And what I do is I'll put a bead of glue on there, like that. And I don't cheap out on glue. A little bit of glue squishes out, that's okay. That'll plane off easy enough. Better off to have a little bit of glue squishing out than not enough. And make sure your joints are good and strong. I'll smear it around, nice even coat all the way along. And I'll do all the other pieces like that as well. By the way, if you're wondering, there's nothing special about this glue. It's just a carpenter's glue. You can buy it at any hardware store. At the school here, I keep a few of these small bottles. I buy a big jug and I just fill them when they're empty. The only thing you need to be aware of with glue is that there's some outdoor glues. If you're building a bench or a table or something for like outdoor furniture, you should make sure that you have a waterproof glue. Okay, so I've got these pieces glued together here. I've got the glue on each of the faces, or edges, sorry. Now I use pipe clamps. This is a pipe clamp. You can see why it's called a pipe clamp, obviously, because it's a clamp mounted on a piece of 3/4 inch pipe. You buy these clamps separately, and then you just buy the pipe and put them on. I like them because they're nice and strong, they're easy to use. You can mount your stuff on there. So you line up the ends, tighten up this clamp a bit. I'll go to this side, tighten up that clamp a bit. Make sure my faces are sort of even though we're going to run this through the planer. And then I'm also going to put 2 clamps over top. So you have a couple underneath, a couple over top. The reason I do that is because if you just do clamps on the bottom, sometimes I've seen it where you tighten the clamp so much and the whole piece pops out. So you just want to even out that pressure by putting clamps underneath, clamps over top. So there's our panel all glued together. You can see here on each of these joints, I've got a nice bead of glue that squeezed out all the way along. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want to see that I got a nice bead of glue squeezing out so that I know that between there, I'm gonna have a nice strong glue joint. I'm gonna let that dry for probably, well, technically you'd only need it to dry for an hour, but I like to leave them overnight. So I'm gonna leave this panel till next time. I'm probably gonna take it home and put it through my own planer because this is just a 12-inch planer. It won't fit through there. I'll run it through my big one at home, and then we'll bring it back here and create the shelf out of it. I think that wraps it up for this episode. We've got the shelf glued together. I'll take that home and plane it. Next time we can mount that into the cabinet. I'll also pick up some 1/2-inch Baltic birch so we can start creating our drawer. Show you how to do that. So yeah, I think that's it for today. Stay safe. Take care.